How's it going, Guy?
Good, good, very good.
Great. Thanks so much for being here today. I really wanted to jump into a little bit of details on personal branding. I know that you have a lot of experience in this area, but first off, why don't we allow you to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your current role with Canva?
Sure. So I'm the chief evangelist of Canva. This is an online graphics design service out of Sydney, Australia. I'm a brand ambassador for Mercedes, and I'm an executive fellow for the Haas School of Business of UC Berkeley.
Excellent. Well, and you've got a lot of history too, developing some incredible books. I think it's 13 different books, if I'm
Yep,
correct. And
yep.
being an evangelist for brands like Apple and, like you said, Mercedes and now Canva. Um, Through that history of building who you are as a
Mhm.
personal brand, I wanted to dive into a little bit of that. One of the books that I had a chance to take a look at is Ape, author,
Yep.
publisher, entrepreneur. You talk about the importance of building a platform. Could you define what a platform means for people?
Sure. So in that context, and I think most modern marketing context, a platform is social media. So a platform is defined by, the number of followers you have on the various media that you can use to market your brand, your product, your service. But, before we go there, let me address something. I have never consciously said, okay, I'm going to build my personal brand.
Hmm. Okay.
And so I want to caution people about that because when you go down that path, you think, okay, I'm going to build my personal brand. So now I've got to write a book. Well, that's not the right reason to write a book. And I've got to write a white paper and I'm going to go get speaking gigs at conferences so that everybody will know I'm a thought leader. And I just don't believe in that. I think a personal brand evolves from what you do naturally as opposed to today I'm going to build my personal brand. That just never enters my mind.
Hmm. So if you start off like you said with more of meaning or being able to provide value, that's
Yeah.
probably a better place to start.
Yeah. I mean, I think you should create a great product or service, market the hell out of it, support it, do all that kind of stuff, do what you have to do. And then your personal brand naturally comes out of that. I don't think Steve Jobs sat down one day and said, I think I'll do an iPhone. That'll help my personal brand. You know, the personal brand is an after effect. It's not the goal.
Got it. Got it. And as you're doing that, you're thinking about creating meaning or helping people in a real incredible way. Obviously the what comes out of that is you're developing yourself and putting
Yes.
yourself out there. Part of that is being trustworthy, likable, having the competence in that
Yes.
subject matter. How do people build that trustworthiness?
Well, I think trustworthiness, first you have to understand the sequence. And the sequence is you have to trust others before they will trust you. The concept that I will trust people when I know that they trust me is false. The onus, the burden is upon you. I also think it's all about defaulting to yes, that you want to help people, even though the payoff may not be obvious or something. So you're willing to pay it forward. And finally, you think like a baker, not an eater, where you're baking more pies, bigger pies. Everybody gets a piece of the pie, as opposed to an eater who says, well, if you eat the pie, I eat less, so I got to eat fast.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And part of that is making sure that you know what you're talking about, right? I mean, coming forward and saying, "Hey, I have a
That's
personal brand and I'm an expert." You got how do you prove that?
Yeah. Well, uh, but see, I don't sit around thinking, well, how do I prove that I know what I'm doing? I just know what I'm doing. So, or I don't. But it's not because I plotted. The thought process is not in my brain like prove that you know what you're doing. I'm just doing what I'm doing, and hopefully it's positive and successful, so people will infer that I know what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But I'm not holding out a sign. I'm not doing like personal brand optimization.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just doing what I'm doing. Now, doing what I'm doing may hurt my personal brand.
Hmm.
For example, and I don't know where you are on the political spectrum. Right now, if you look at all my social media platforms, I am heavy, heavy into politics.
Hmm.
And let's just say that, I'm not supportive of the current administration. And so, theoretically, if I were worried about my personal brand, I would sit down and I would make the calculation. Well, you're going to attract this amount of people. You're going to turn off this amount of people. Is it worth it to your personal brand? That thought has never gone through my brain. My thought is, this is what I believe is right, and I'm doing it. And if people don't like it, they don't have to believe in me. They don't have to follow me. They don't have to like me, whatever it is. And ironically, that in itself creates a personal brand, because now people have seen that I'm willing to take a political stand. I'm willing to risk my personal brand. So I have more credibility, not less.
Absolutely. And that's, you've said that in some of your books and your speeches too. Don't try to cater to everybody. I mean, not everybody's going to like you, right?
Yeah. In fact, you can measure a person by the people who don't like him.
Well, I like your boldness. I follow you a lot on social media.
Yeah.
And you have some critics, some trolls, some haters out there that, especially at your level, as you start to build things up. How do you deal with that?
I block them.
Yep.
I just get rid of them.
Yep.
And, there's going to be, well, for one thing, they're all probably Russian, right? So what do I care? What do I care?
Well, that's great. Well, I mean, if it doesn't faze you, as especially as you've built your career in such a way where you want to be yourself, and that's who you are, and that's how you have continued to be so successful. I mean, you have 1.5 million Twitter followers. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, how did you build such a following?
Well, first of all, when it comes to anybody's follower count, it's suspect, because who knows how many of those are real, how many of those are live, how many of those are still on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. So take that with a grain of salt. Basically, I joined Twitter fairly early on with Twitter at a time where people were looking for people to follow. And prior to joining Twitter, I had 25 or 30 years of tech experience. So I was a known and visible entity. So back then in the pioneer days of Twitter, if you were a known and visible entity, people were looking for people to follow. So if you plotted my followers against years, you would see that I probably gained 90% of that in the first 2 years, and it's just been flat since. Because, I mean, at that point, when Kim Kardashian and Donald Trump and, everybody else is in there, then, who am I compared to them?
Right. No, that makes sense. Well, I mean, for people who are starting out now to try to build who they are, obviously provide a product that gives meaning, or a service that gives meaning, that actually helps people, and they're looking to get out there and take advantage of social media. There's so many different formats out there right now. Where should people focus to try to make a dent?
Well, obviously, or maybe not obviously, it depends on the business. So right now, I'm really into surfing, and so I'm helping a surfing brand called Pearson Arrow, arguably the best surfboards in the world. And so they have a few thousand followers on Instagram, a few thousand followers on Facebook, and and they're asking me the same question. And I think for a brand like a surfing brand, the only two that really matter are Facebook and Instagram. Now, so I would say that's probably true for clothing, for restaurant, for hotel, for whatever. If you have beautiful stuff, beautiful pictures of surfboards, beautiful food, beautiful hotel, beautiful clothes, it's Instagram and Facebook. It might be just Instagram, seriously. But certainly it's Instagram and Facebook. Twitter, man, I mean, Twitter at this point, there's so much noise, and I don't know how you stand out on Twitter anymore.
Yeah.
So I would not advocate Twitter. And the third one that I would do if I were a professional is LinkedIn. I think you could make the case that LinkedIn may be the most useful social media platform, because people are much more likely to be who they say they are on LinkedIn than any place else. So now, having said that, Pearson Arrow is not on LinkedIn, because people don't go to LinkedIn for surfing.
Right. But
if it was a consultancy, a legal practice, small business that lends itself to this kind of LinkedIn atmosphere, we'd be all over that. If it was a web design firm or management consulting firm, yes, all over that. But how many restaurants are on LinkedIn? How many food? How many fashion designers are on LinkedIn, maybe as people, but not necessarily as corporations.
Right.
So I think for most of your listeners, the order for small business anyway is probably Instagram, Facebook, or Facebook, Instagram, one or two, either way. And then third is LinkedIn.
Yeah. And let's keep on the topic for your surfboard company there. How important is it for them to produce content outside of just making great products that get people to continue to understand who they are as a brand?
Yeah. So listen, we're exploring that as we go because it's easy to write the book and to give advice. It's another thing to actually work for a surfing company and actually make this happen, right?
Yeah.
So I can tell you that if you look at the Instagram account for Pearson Arrow, the pictures that get the most likes are the pictures where we show a bunch of surfboards. So, clearly people, I think it's surfboard porn that people love to look at beautiful surfboards. And so, and that's good. Now, can I prove to you that people looked at a picture on Instagram and bought a board? No. But it's about branding there. It's about getting awareness that, when you go into Costco and you see a $150 Wavestorm that's a foam board, or you could get the best board from Pearson Arrow. I mean, but you got to know that Pearson Arrow exists. Mm-hmm. So it may not be your first board, may not be your second board, probably should be your third board though. Yeah. And that's the kind of investment we're making. But having said all that, let's think about what's the cost of doing Facebook and Instagram. Now, seriously. So, a bunch of us have access to that account. When we find a great picture of a Pearson Arrow, or if a famous surfer comes and picks up his quiver at the factory, we take a picture. How much did that cost? Basically zero, right?
Right.
And so I'm not saying you should go into Facebook and Instagram and spend $2 million on, buying followers and, placing ads. I'm saying if somebody just took a beautiful surfboard, take a picture as he's leaving a factory. If you want to show how surfboards are made, shoot a video on your iPhone. It's not that hard. And if you're Mercedes-Benz, which is the other hat I wear, mm-hmm. you have like crews come in and the place is lit and there's like a special place in the back for the crew to eat lunch and it's a whole whatever to show this car. But let's face it, that's 5 standard deviations beyond what most people do. Mm-hmm. If you're a small surfboard company in Santa Cruz and you're selling thousands of boards a year, you get your phone out, you take a picture. I mean, people are not expecting a all-day photo shoot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think a lot for small businesses, the ability now with technology to produce decent content doesn't cost that much anymore, right?
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. And it adds 60 seconds to your delivery process, and you post a picture of you and your customer getting his board, and then he reshares it because he's so happy to be on the Pearson Arrow social media feed, and then
he's a fan for life.
He's a fan for life. And there's another path which is user-generated content. So send us a picture of you and your Pearson Arrow, we'll post it. Yeah, Mercedes says send us a picture of you and your Mercedes, and we'll post it. That's free, easy content. I mean, you just have to open up an email to get that, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not that hard. It's not that expensive.
Yeah. Well, one thing you talk about in The Art of the Start is the ability for people to have a easy to understand and quickly worded mantra.
Yes.
Being able to just kind of put it out there so people understand, not the corporate jargon.
Yes.
Why is that important, especially for small business owners?
It's important for everybody. It could be arguably more important for big businesses because they're more tempted to do the 50-word mission statement that nobody understands and cares about. But I think it's just so that you can explain your business, whether it's to your spouse, to your family, to your investors, potential investors, your customers, your vendors, anybody. So take Canva, for example. So Canva, we can define that company in 2 words: democratize design. That's all I need to do to explain Canva. Google, you could explain in 2 words too. Democratize information. And so I think you'll see that when you need 50 words to explain what you do, you got a
You're
problem.
missing the mark.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool. Well, you've had some great success, obviously, with being evangelists for companies, authors. One thing that you've said you've personally enjoyed a lot is being a public speaker.
Yes.
When did you start that portion of your career?
I started that around 1987. It happened by accident. I wrote a book called The Macintosh Way, and I published it, and then people read it, and they started calling me to come speak to their company. And again, going back to my theory of not worrying about my personal brand, I had no idea. It's not like I sat down and said, okay, Guy, here's the plan. You write the book, people are going to hire you for speeches, you build your personal brand. Never happened. I wrote the book as a cathartic experience. The phone started ringing. I answered the phone, and I named the number. They said yes. Next time the phone rang, I upped the number. They said yes. I kept upping the number until people started saying no. And so that's how it went down. And 30 years later, I have a personal brand.
That's great. And since you've been able to up the number every time, that's probably one of your favorite income resources based on the time spent, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, speaking may be one of the greatest fears of people, but it's not for me. Now, having said that, I've been speaking for literally 30 years. So after 30 years, you better be good at something. And for me, like I watch people and they labor and they labor and they write out every word and they rehearse and all that. But when you've given the same speech, 500 times, man, I tell people when I make a speech for them, and you've seen me speak,
Yep.
right, for some of your clients.
Yep.
I tell people, you have up till half an hour before I go on to change the speech. And even that half an hour is because of your AV people, not me. I mean, that's when you get to this point. But as I said, it takes 30 years to get to this point.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great career and very inspiring for a lot of people who are starting out. There was a couple people that wrote to me and had a couple questions for you
Yeah.
that I thought I'd just give them an opportunity to
Sure.
get a plug here. Larry Ludwig, who's from Investor Junkie, has a question for you. He says, "What's the biggest mistake people make when they're trying to build their personal brand?" And you and I touched on this a little bit already. Maybe it's the fact of just trying to build your personal brand.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, Andy.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, that really is the answer. I think that, I mean, does that shoot down your entire show when I tell you?
Not at all. No, I think that actually helps it a lot. I think the focus was to, what we're trying to do on the show is to try to help people learn the opportunities that come with entrepreneurship, as well as developing your small business or a side hustle to help you make more money, help your family, and grow. So, part of that is trying to develop who you are and, getting yourself out there so people can understand your service. But your point of trying to find something that you can help people with first and make meaning instead of building your personal brand, quote unquote, makes a ton of sense.
Well, that is basically what I'm saying. That, if you're sitting there with your personal brand advisor plotting out how you're going to build your personal brand, I mean, seriously, just make a great product. Everything, or a great product or great service, serve great food, make great fashion, make great surfboards. Everything else will follow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to brand great stuff. It's hard to brand crap. So the key is don't make crap.
I love it.
Yeah. There, 3 words. Don't make crap.
There we go. Keep it short, right?
That's it. That's all there is to personal branding.
Very cool. Well, so Stephen Chen has a question here. He's from New Retirement. He asks, and this is probably makes some sense as you've worked with multiple different organizations. He says, how tightly should you tie your personal brand to the company? What if you do another company in the future?
Yeah. So Is this the founder of the company we're
Yes,
talking
yes,
about,
this is the
or? Huh?
founder of the company. Yep.
Well, first of all, I think the social media should be separate, founder versus company, because founders die, founders get fired, founders whatever retire. So it needs to be separate. The day the founder is gone should not be the end of social media and branding, obviously. So that it has to be separate. But I think if you're the founder or CXO or someone who my identity is Canva, right? And so until the day where you're gone, you're all in. You're all in for that. And it's not about, I'm the CEO of XYZ, but, let me tell you about the consultancy I have on the side, and let me tell you about whatever, and let me tell you about this book I've written. I mean, everything should be for the brand, in my humble opinion, the corporate brand.
Right. Who you're working for.
Yeah, like I don't, Steve Jobs was not out there pimping himself. Okay. The fact is that Steve Jobs succeeded, and we all know about him because of Apple. Not now, which came first? He created Apple, so Apple became the brand. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's not. I guarantee you, he did not sit down there and say, "Okay, so how do I improve the Steve Jobs brand?" That never entered his brain.
Well, creating that separation makes a lot of sense. I completely agree, and this whole point of not thinking about your personal brand first is great. I think that'll be the name of the show.
Okay.
Well, cool. So you've been building your brand, your career, your diversified business platforms for a long time. How did you find balance with your family life and your business life in order to kind of be successful on both fronts? Because you're a father of four, is that right?
Yes. Yes. Well, first of all, not clear that I have found balance. Okay,
Still seeking it.
yeah. So I think the person who says they found balance is the person you should beware of. uh, I have a very bifurcated life. When I speak, I'm on the road, and so I have heavy months. But June, July, December, I'm off the road already. There's nothing, virtually nothing. So I'm home all the time. Arguably, it's harder to manage my family when I'm home because I just disrupt every system that works when I'm not home. Um, so when I'm home, I don't go to an office. I don't, I'm not. It's not like I'm working at a 60-hour job and then I travel. It's I travel and then that's it. So I'm either traveling or surfing, basically, and that's what I do. I happen to just love my children. So we all surf together.
That's great.
I have a very special family in the sense that on any given day, there's four of my kids in the water with me, and my wife is watching from the cliff. And I have a teenage daughter who's 16, and every weekend we go surfing. She just doesn't care about shopping and partying. Now, I don't know how long that's going to last, but till it ends, I'm going to, soak it up.
Take advantage of it while you can, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to place the books that we mentioned today in the show notes. We'll have people check those out. As you were, going along your entrepreneurial journey, was there a book that was really influential to you that helped you?
Sure. Probably the most influential book was a book called If You Want to Write by Brenda Euland. And it's for writers, but it's for anybody doing anything, really. If you want to program, if you want to market, if you want to cook, if you want to paint, it really set me free. That's the book I most recommend to people. Excellent. Second book is Influenced by Bob Cialdini, social psychology book.
Where's the best place people can follow you? Obviously, we talked about Twitter and learn more about the Guy Kawasaki brand.
Well, if they want to see what's going on in my personal life, it's Instagram, where I'm Guy Kawasaki. If they want to see what I really care about, it's LinkedIn, where I'm Guy Kawasaki. But I'm warning you right now, if you follow me on LinkedIn, be prepared for a heavy liberal slant because I believe in science. I believe in vaccines. I believe in women's rights. I believe in climate change. I believe in a lot of stuff. Okay.
That's
So
good.
know what you're getting into if you follow me on LinkedIn.
There's nothing wrong with being passionate about what you believe in. That's great.
Okay.
Very admiring. Thank you, Guy.